I got a tweet. Preview I'm going to talk about right there. Let me finish the tweet. Losses. Okay. Guess we can get started now. Let me also grab the chat just so I know if anyone's here. How do I do it? I forget. Hop out. There it is. Hey, welcome. I saw somebody put some text and then it went away when I popped out the chat. But hello. Let me hide that. Hey, Tony. Welcome. Put that over there. That over there. Okay. That was a long start. This is the Sausage Sports Club weekly update. I do this every week, mostly. I do it for 4 reasons. One, I think it's useful for students or new developers to see what it's like to make a commercial game, what somebody goes through in that process, what you do every week, that you do work every week, all that kind of stuff. I also like to answer questions and help people get started. That was really useful for me, so that's a big part of it. 2 is the obvious marketing thing of having like new stuff to say every week about the game. It's useful to talk about it so people know about it. That's 2. 3 is kind of a selfish reason of keeping a record of my development process and like my process as a designer. And so in 10 years or whatever, I can look back and see what was my process like for making games. What have I learned? What did I used to do that was cool? When I was solving this specific problem, like how did I think about it then? Like having a record is useful in that way. And then the 4th new reason that I learned during the show is that often people will come into the chat or whatever, see I'm doing something in a stupid way and recommend a better way to do it. And then my process gets better, and that's awesome. So that's why I do this. And the format is generally just like I make a big list of stuff I did that week, specifically trying to focus on the like most interesting topics or like the most learnable from things I did that week. And yeah, so here's my big list this week. As I mentioned on Twitter, I missed last week because I was at a wedding in Chicago. The wedding was on Sunday and I was in Chicago without my like workstation, so I couldn't really do anything. But because I was in Chicago where a lot of my friends are, I was able to do a lot of playtesting with them and get feedback that I haven't been able to get in Austin. So even though I was like not able to stream, and for the weekend I wasn't able to do work, I still got some good notes on the game, and also just took a break. It was nice to see some of my friends and just like hang out. So that was cool. Alex, I think it was you, so welcome. Uh, Glad to have you. So I guess I'm just gonna get right into it and start going through this list. Um, I already said I missed last week. I already said I got some playtesting in. A lot of that playtesting was um, just kind of like big groups of people just like breaking the game. Like Indie City Games is a big thing in Chicago that happens every 2 months where people come. Usually there's one big talk. This month there was a talk from Chris. I don't know Chris's last name, but he goes by Luno Land on Twitter, I think. And his talk was about how to get into like start and keep working on a creative project, and it was really cool. And then after that we did after that at these events generally you do like a show and tell of what you're working on that's very short, like 5 minutes, and then after that everybody play tests their games. At this particular playtest, it was a theater at DePaul University in Chicago, where they have like a giant projector screen in the front and then like a theater kind of audience. And this was, I think, because somebody was using the normal room that they use, which is more of just like more of a standard auditorium with like tables and stuff. But this one happened to be in this projector room, which was really good for Sausage Sports Club because having a really big screen makes it easier for a lot of people to play at once, and that was cool. But at this playtest and at another kind of bigger, less focused playtest, I just got a bunch of feedback of like what's broken, what doesn't work, how far away do I have to stand from the Nintendo Switch before the input starts to lag and like feel shitty. How often does the game crash? Where does it crash? That kind of stuff. There was also, I didn't mention this, Juegos Rancheros was the Thursday before that. I flew out on Friday evening, but that Thursday was Juegos Rancheros, which is this big event in Austin, which I was excited to be invited to show Sausage at. But that's a monthly event in Austin, which they showcase one game on like a big screen, like a big projector screen or whatever, and that's like the main game of the event that they market with. And then anybody is invited to bring their game and show it in like what they call the indie alley, I think, which is just like in this big bar. There's like a top level, and then there's like an array of tables or whatever, tables and chairs, and so you can set your laptop up with that and get feedback that way. It was cool to have Sausage invited to be at that, and that was at this bar. They had a giant projector screen, the biggest projector I've ever seen. It was like, I don't know, it must have been like 30 feet tall, maybe 30 by 50 or something. That sounds really tall, but it was huge. And that was cool. And I got similar kind of feedback of like where do things break, what are like easy to fix bugs, really obvious bugs. So that was cool. I don't know why I'm going so deep into the details about this, about like where it was shown. I should just focus on the game. I'll mention another type of playtest I did this weekend was with two of my friends from Chicago, Tom and Sebastian, and also Marley, who happens to be Sebastian's girlfriend. But they played adventure mode and just like tried to get as far as they could in adventure mode, and it was the first time I'd really play tested this in a focused way. And there were definitely some problems, like they would get through stuff and it would crash, and they even got to a point where every time the game would try to save there would be a crash, which I still haven't debugged yet. So there were like some really frustrating moments, but after playing for a while and kind of getting a feel for what the game was and learning the controls and getting into the tempo of the game or whatever, they're actually like really having fun and doing what I'm hoping people will do a lot in the overworld and adventure mode, which is making your own fun by exploring and like playing with toys and being excited to find new things and like do things I don't expect as well, like emergent gameplay style stuff. An example of that from this playtest was in the Hollywood biome. I can actually show this over here. In the Hollywood biome of the overworld, there's a movie set that's like a moon landing, and in the moon landing there's this robot that if you get close enough to it, the robot will start following you around. Yep, Tony, the overworld is like pretty much poppin' pals. But yeah, so inside this moon landing, there's this robot, and he looks like this. It's like a moon rover kind of thing. Let me unselect. Okay. And if you get within range of him, he'll just start following you and kind of like reaching his grabber out to touch you and poke you and stuff. But Tom saw this and immediately wanted this robot to always be with their group forever. And this kind of isn't like, I didn't expect, I mean, I expected that people would play with this robot, but I didn't expect that somebody would like it enough where they would try to bring it around with them everywhere. So I didn't really test, like, where could the robot go? Like, what, if you took it out of the biome, like, what would it do? But the funny part of this is that this robot, like, only moves at, like, maybe half the speed that a player moves. And so you have to, like, wait for it to catch up to you, or it'll fall out of your range and like stop following you. So they like, and Tom had control of the camera because in adventure mode only one player controls the camera, just to like make it less crazy. It's kind of the like Spelunky problem of if everybody runs in a different direction, like the camera's gonna try to stay in the middle, and then eventually everybody will either get off screen or like it'll zoom out so far that nobody can see what they're doing. Yeah, Tony, that's cool. Kirby Air Ride. I apparently did this a lot when I was a very little kid. This kind of like playing in the game systems. My mom always tells me that when I would play Zelda, like Ocarina of Time, like when I was too young to really like play it, she would like help me through it or whatever. But I would always do like not the thing you're supposed to do. I would just like throw every single pot at the wall and then like roll through every like piece of grass and roll into every tree to just try to see like where stuff was. So that's like somewhere deep in my like game playing brain or whatever, that's like stuck in me. So that's part of why why I make this game. And anyway, like point of that robot story being, yeah, the QA kid. I don't think I was trying to break it. I think I just wanted to see like what was there. Like I wanted to explore the world in that really like small way. I always would make my own fun. And anyway, the point of this story about the robot being that in this playtest where things were really frustrating, there were tons of crashes, and sometimes they would have to like go through the player select sequence and like get into the game like 3 or 4 times. I think one time it crashed 3 times in a row, and then they eventually got into the game. Despite this initial like terrible frustration, they still ended up having fun with the game and like being able to like get into the flow and rhythm of what I wanted them to do. And it was so like exciting and affirming to see that finally coming together after literally spending a year like building up this overworld and adventure mode. And especially because at a year ago when I was like, I'm gonna make this thing, I think it's really gonna make the game better, it's important that it has this other level. When I was trying to decide that, and when I made that decision, it was really contentious for me because I knew it was going to be this big scope creep thing, and I knew it was going to extend development by a lot. So getting to this point where like it's finally together, you can experience it in the way I envisioned it, a year ago, that it's working and people are like engaging with it in the way I was hopeful they would. It's really affirming and exciting. So that was like the best part of the last 2 weeks for sure. In regards to this game. So that was huge. Another really cool moment that happened in the past 2 weeks was getting the game to run on the Switch at 60 FPS, even with 8 players. Not all the time. There's still times where it dips, but it's like way more consistent now. Previously, I was barely ever able to get up to 60 with 8 players, and now it's like I don't want to put a percentage of time on it, but it's like it's more common to be at 60 than not, which is like a flip, like a total flip from what it was before. And this happened because I upgraded to a new version of Unity, 2017.3.1 or something, where they had made changes to how the physics engine works. And I don't know the details of this change, but there's something called deferred transform update, which is like what one of the people on the physics team there said was like the thing they changed. I'm not even gonna guess what it is. I'll do more research into what that is, and I'll talk to the guy. But I know there's been significant work done in multiple parts of like different parts of the physics engine, and that's just one part that was specifically new to this update. And I had upgraded from like 5.6 something, so it was like a pretty big version change. Yeah, Alex, it's stressful to upgrade, and I'll get into all the reasons that it was stressful. And yeah, Lunaland's game is really cool. He's been working on that alone for like 2 years, and he does everything, even the music. It's totally crazy. Yeah, I recommend following them. Hopefully, they'll put up that he did a version of that talk on Twitch like a couple weeks before he gave the talk in person, and I gave him feedback on that. But I'm not sure if the archive is still up on his channel or not. It was a cool talk. Anyway, getting back to the Unity upgrade. So I upgraded Unity, immediately tried to fix a bunch of the build issues. Brizziant, the event I showed Sausage at in Chicago is called Indie City Games. I can link you to the Facebook page of this. It's a bi-monthly event, meaning it happens every other month. And here we go. And like I said, there's usually a talk, and then after the talk, there's like a show and tell, and then after the show and tell, you do playtesting. And it's like every month. It's like saying like a lot. Every month, not everybody who's an indie in the city goes to this, so it's worth going to a lot so that you over time you'll meet more and more people in the scene. And that's when I was in school, going to this event was how I got in touch with everybody. Oh man, can you hear this alarm? Looks like no. Mic seems to be off. There's an alarm happening in the background, so I might have to like stop the stream if this is like a fire alarm or something, but it looks like you can't hear it. Okay, anyway, Indie City Games is really cool. It's a good way to meet people in Chicago and show your work. You can hear it. Oh. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna like see if I can figure out what it is. you hear me? It looks like there's a fire alarm in the apartment complex across from me. Like out my window, there's like 100 feet and then another building. I guess there's a fire alarm in that building. Hopefully not a bad fire. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna continue. Maybe that'll become a bigger issue, but hopefully it's not too loud. Alex, I see there's a question. Did Nintendo update their special Unity build for Switch? They gave a talk at Unite this year, and the 3DS switched up was bound to a special Nintendo Unity build that was built on 5.6. So all of the consoles, I don't want to get into specifics of Nintendo, but all of the consoles tend to have multiple versions that you can be on that are constantly like shifting forwards every time Unity does a new update. And it's usually not right away after Unity releases a new update that they'll like make their version of it. But there's usually like five or so versions at a time, and then as the new one comes out and they upgrade to it, everybody moves up, and they generally deprecate an old one so that developers are encouraged to upgrade and like utilize new features. Like with the Switch, there was they released an update that added like you could save a video with the screenshot button on the Switch instead of just a screenshot, and that was like a thing you had to upgrade to the new Switch version. So that's the kind of thing you would upgrade for. Or if there's a Unity upgrade and you want some Unity feature, you have to wait for them to upgrade the Switch version. But it is one-to-one. Like you do have to be on the matching Switch version to use the matching Unity version, if that makes sense. And you have to update your dev kit to be like in that range or whatever. Okay, so I was starting to get into a Unity update, like talking about that. So I heard about this update. I heard there's a huge physics, this huge physics optimization. So I checked like immediately. I was like, oh, I don't know if this is like a thing I can upgrade to on Switch, but if it is, we're gonna have to do this because physics is the bottleneck of the game. And if we could fix that, then that would make the game run at the frame rate we want. So I updated, and immediately the game did not run. It just crashed every time. So there were some issues. A notable bug in this version of Unity, not even the Switch version, as far as I know, is that maybe it's on Switch, but the game would crash if any textures being loaded into memory were set to use bitmaps, and also were not a power of 2 size. So power of 2 size is like generally it's like an optimization thing for compression. I don't know exactly how the compression part of it works, but your textures will compress more if you're using a 1024 by 1024 instead of like a 1027 by 1027 or something. And so there's a bunch of things Unity does and things that like OpenGL can do when you're using the right size texture, and so for some reason there was some issue that came up in this version of Unity where my build would crash if those two things happen. So I had to go through every texture in the game, and if it wasn't a power of 2, I either had to delete it or change its size to like actually be right, or I could turn off mint mapping in some cases. In some places that was super simple and easy to find, but it turns out that there are like 700 textures in my project, so it just took a long time to go through all of them and find which ones were problematic. A funny thing that came up when I was doing this, the very last texture that I had to fix before the build worked was this like joke that I put in the game that you can't see in the game at all. But when I was working at the co-op in Chicago, for some reason, David Lasky and I had this joke where the cars in this level should be like the cars, or that Mater from Cars should be in this level. So I added this texture here stupid car eyes bullshit as a joke. You can't see it in the game, like I said, unless you like debug camera your way around to see it. But this happened to be the last texture that was crashing the game, and this was probably like 4 in the morning or something when I realized this was it, and I thought it was so funny. And I think my fix was probably just to disable bitmaps on it. Yeah. Okay. Welcome back, Yaku. So other Unity upgrade stuff. When I upgrade, I noticed that some things are wrong with InControl, my input system that like automatically makes all the types of controllers that people generally use with games work with Unity. If you've used Unity, you know the input system is bad. But if you've used InControl or Rewired, you know that it's like fairly trivial to get around that by using one of these plugins. So I had to upgrade that as well, which didn't cause me any problems. And I had to upgrade TextMesh Pro, which did cause me a bunch of problems, and I had to go through the game and like fix a bunch of spots where TextMesh Pro is weird. Specifically, for some reason I upgraded the TextMesh Pro while Unity was open, and then everything seemed broken until I think I had to restart my computer, but I definitely had to restart Unity. And I might have even had to like delete my library so everything was re-imported. But that was super annoying. Other issues from the Unity upgrade. One big one that I'm still trying to figure out. Somehow the shader compiler for geometry shaders either changed or like got more strict. So to give a little bit of context, there's this grass shader that I use in the overworld for some places where there's grass. And if you're not familiar, a geometry shader is basically like a piece of code you can run on your GPU, your graphics card, that creates geometry at every vertex in a mesh, if that makes sense. So if I pass in a cube, I can say at every vertex on this cube, every point along this cube, you know, make a sphere, make a triangle, make a whatever. You can make geometry. And for this grass, I didn't want to make like a super high poly mesh for the grass because it would just like be expensive to do that. And another thing I'll mention later is that I discovered an optimization that actually matters on Switch is not having too high of a poly count. I thought as a modern piece of hardware, its poly count like limit was going to be way higher than it is, but apparently it's not crazy high. Like I don't remember what the actual numbers are in Tiny Tokyo, but in the overworld now, my max vert count is like maybe like 500,000, 600,000 polygons, and that's like pushing up close to like the max I can have before the Switch really starts chugging. Okay, so the geometry shader, as I was saying, like I create this like garbage mesh. I just like randomly. I actually need to explain a little bit more for this to make sense. So, okay, so to generate this grass, I wrote a script that lets you define these little circles and then click this generate button and it will generate a mesh with a verts at a bunch of random points around like within the radius of the circle, or if you do a square within the square. Let's go back to circle. I don't want to click on it. but the mesh that gets created is literally just like a bunch of random points. So it's just data. I don't care about what it looks like in this stage. I just want points. And then this parent object is another script that just takes all of the mesh and all of the children and then combines them into one mesh. So if I delete this material, I've got just like a bunch of this just data. It's like I don't care what the mesh looks like. It's just a bunch of data, a bunch of points in space. And then in the shader, in the geometry shader, I say at every point that I'm passing you, make a blade of grass, which is just a triangle like this that comes up from the point and wiggles the top vert. I can't really do this well with my finger, but you know, wiggle the top vert, and that makes it look like waving grass. So for some reason, the like code I was using to make this happen in the shader broke on Switch, and I still haven't quite got it working yet, but I at least got it to compile and not break on Switch. The pressing on the balloon here actually like doesn't work. It's a prototype, but I'm sure it looks familiar from Animal Crossing, and I want it to do the same thing it does in Animal Crossing, basically, where you have to catch it, yeah, like as it's flying by, you have to like go hit it with your head, and then that will give you a bunch of coins to unlock new hats, or maybe it would give you a hat. I don't. Either way, like it doesn't work yet. So grass is still busted. That's from the Unity upgrade. Let's continue. I think that's most of the Unity stuff that I ran into. There's actually another upgrade already out that... another issue. This one was reported pretty fast, and it's already fixed, and I can already download a new Switch version and a new Unity version to fix this bug. But if you disable the game object, if you disable a game object in the scene that has a collider on it, and then right after that toggle whether the collider on that disabled game object is enabled or not, that will cause an error in the console. Or if you're on, you know, a release, if you're on a console in release version, that will just crash the system, and maybe you can get like the crash log or whatever to see what did that. But it's very annoying. It's not necessarily a common case where you would disable or enable a collider on a disabled object, but there are some places in the game where I do it. Like if I know when a character becomes active, I need to like change some stuff about their collision. Maybe when they get disabled, I might turn off their colliders there. Just as an example, I haven't gone through and like tried to fix this case because I know it's a bug and that Unity has already fixed it. But that's an example where you might use it. So that one's really annoying for me because my Switch build crashes sometimes when I do a scene change, and like and that's very annoying and like not really something I can maybe not something I can fix. So zooming out one level, upgrading the Unity version is dangerous, but sometimes it's worth it to do that so that you can get the new, you know, the new thing from Unity. And for me in this specific case, it was totally worth it to upgrade for this performance upgrade. It just caused a lot of trouble, created a lot of bugs. Okay, let's keep going. So another thing I did this week that I had been putting off a long time because it's annoying is actually going through the trees in the overworld here and converting them to have different LOD levels. These trees have been... Is this game pay to win? Is that what your question is? It's a premium game, and there are no in-app purchases. Maybe there would be paid DLC eventually, but probably not. Yeah, it's definitely not pay to win. Getting back to the trees, they've been like one of the biggest sources of performance concern in the entire game, because when you're in the jungle, there's tons of them on screen at once. It's weird that these are so dark. I might look into that and see if I can fix it. It's probably calling related. Yeah, because there's so many of them on screen, and generally foliage is transparent, it created a lot of overdraw, and that was like a big problem before. But now that physics isn't as much the bottleneck and rendering is kind of the as much or more of the frame time as like physics and all the script stuff, now that overdraw isn't as big of an issue as poly count, which is pretty annoying because I spent a lot of time actually like modeling out this tree to be modeled so that there wasn't overdraw. But now that poly count is my bottleneck as much as overdraw, now I kind of like need to find a balance between overdraw and poly count. So what I did was I'm using Unity's LOD system, which at different distances switches to different models. So that when I'm the high level idea is that once I get far enough away from the trees so that this isn't going to be an overdraw problem, then you can switch to transparency, like alpha cutout, and we don't have to worry about overdraw. But as we get farther away and there's like we're seeing other stuff in the scene, there are more polygons, so we want to like get rid of those other polygons. So we're in this situation of LODs, we're trading, poly count for alpha and overdraw, but because it's on a smaller chunk of the screen, like it doesn't matter as much as it would if you're up close. So to clarify a little bit, I guess, at the lowest LOD level, this is like a very high poly mesh. I think it's maybe like 1,000 polygons. Let's find out. Okay, 1,600 tries, that's a lot. And then once we go out a bit, it's much lower. 200 tries, and then one step out farther, it's like under 100 maybe? Yeah, just under 100. So it doesn't look so bad. Once you're out that far, you totally can't tell. I think I know what the lighting issue is here. Can you play what you have so far? Naloth, sure, I can jump in for a second, show you what's up. It would take too long for me to play through the whole game, but I can show you briefly what the game is. Let's do museum, soccer, and I'll stick with Alley. Also, welcome, Naloth, if I didn't say that before. The game is almost done. It's a physics sports game where you play as floppy animals and play a bunch of different sports. I assume I'll be in soccer, yeah. It's interesting that I am on the same team with 2 other bots. It's weird. So you can kick, there's a kick button, which is what this like dash thing is. You can also do a ground pound like Mario. You can use the kick to knock other people around. You can do a stomp to hit people as well. Got lots of physics stuff. You can also use the right stick to swing your head around like this. And aside from being just like silly, that's also useful to like finesse the ball or to block shots. this bot is killing it. So that's soccer. Let me get rid of that. Okay, so if I go back to mode select, thanks now. Go back to mode select, there's also a bunch of other game modes to try besides soccer. Just capture the flag, coins, there's paintball mode, which is a lot like Splatoon, and sumo. Capture the flag. So in this one, it's just like capture the flag. You want to take other people's flags, bring them back to your base. And you, in this game specifically, you aren't allowed to dash while you're holding the flag. So that creates kind of a like a catch-up mechanic of like, if somebody's stolen my flag, it's easier to catch them because they can't really like get away, or I could catch up to them by dashing towards them. Got him. Okay. So there's also 4 arenas in the game. This is the Bug Museum. They're each themed. They each have kind of a gimmick to it. I didn't show you before, but along with these bugs flying around, there's also this rhino bug on the back wall. Can't see where I'm pointing with my hand. This rhino bug on the back wall will like pick up either the soccer ball, or if I play paint, he'll like pick that up and chuck it. So it's kind of if people get stuck along that back wall and they're not really like having a long game. Oh, this is funny. See these bots running in a circle? I'm gonna take a GIF of this. Okay. Hopefully that won't be too big. Okay, it's good. And I'll jump to another arena now. I need Junkyard next. So there's also a bunch of characters. Here I have 13, but I think there's 14? There's one more that's not unlocked here for some reason. Oh, I know which one it is. Okay. Yeah, Dirk's not unlocked here. So this is another arena. This is the Junkyard. In this level, the gimmick is these trash robots that run around and eat trash. That one burped. Cool. That's like pretty unlikely to happen. Them to burp. So eventually, once they eat enough trash, they explode and like dump out a bunch of garbage. So it's kind of like an economy thing of like creating and destroying garbage. Let's go back to main menu, do another level. Tiny Tokyo is the newest arena. Elton, the bus is from another indie game called Omnibus. That's also a physics game. Also is made in Chicago, and I'm friends with the developers, so it just felt like a good fit. I'll play as the bus, just to get the bus in here. Okay, so this is Tiny Tokyo. I feel like I don't need to explain this one's gimmick. Yep, total game synergy. Oh, I'll try paint mode as well. You haven't done that one yet. So like I said, this one's a lot like Splatoon, but instead of using a gun to paint, you're using your face, or you could also use this ball. So it's kind of running. I guess it's because I'm on stream. Seems like the frame rate's kind of low. That bot's all stuck. So that's paint. Aquarium's the other map I haven't shown yet. So in this one, the gimmick is these tentacles that you can kind of ride on. They're goofy. I haven't shown hats yet. As you play the game, you'll unlock a bunch of different hat types and characters and skins for the characters. You can put the characters on your character. There you go. You can also go to different arenas through the arenas if you're in quick play. Oh, we got an error. Cool. Okay, so let's go back to the main menu. So that's all that stuff I've shown you so far is like the competitive quick play stuff. There's also, in addition to that, there's like a co-op way to play the game. I'll just jump into adventure. So you can play this mode either single player or co-op with up to 4 players. And it's a little weird to explain. You must be the new contestant. Welcome to Sausage Sports Club. What? You don't know what Sausage Sports Club is? Well, don't worry, I'll show you around. First off, meet me in the gym so we can go over some basics. So to give you the high-level pitch, adventure mode is, like I said, a 1 to 4 player co-op way to play the game where you play out a season of Sausage Sports Club, which is, in the world of the game, a reality TV show where all of these animal characters are competing at sports to win and become champion. In the game, these 4 seasons, or the season you're playing is over the course of 4 days. On each day, you do 3 quests where, and I'll jump ahead so we can see that. Each day you do 3 quests, which is you interacting with NPCs who have interpersonal drama with another NPC that can only be solved by playing a sports match. Thanks, Elton. It's been a long road to figure out the UI. So a quest, there's interpersonal drama between 2 NPCs where one might have like written a rap song as a favor to one, and then the one is upset with the rap song because it's not what they expect, and so they want like a rewrite, and then you come up and they're like, hey, we're having this disagreement, like, you know, help us decide what to do, and then you play a sports match to like decide who's the actual winner. Let's do adventure day 1. No quest overrides. Okay. And then at the end of each day, you kind of have this like narrator Dirk, who like recaps what happened that day, tells you how you're doing in terms of the whole competition. And then, you know, over the season, you get this a few times, and you meet all the characters, you get to know all the characters through these quests. And then at the end, you either win or lose, and, you know, you celebrate like who did well, the different things. I'll do one of these just to show what it is. What if my frame rate was good? don't think I can get back my frame rate, unfortunately. Close more Chrome windows. Okay, let's continue. Stop winding me up, man. You obviously aren't busy training for a marathon. Let's just play already. Heh, well, I'm pretty busy here. I guess we can race, though. Let me just go shower off. Ugh. He thinks he's so smooth. This is the third time this season he's pulled that move. There's no shower. He's gonna wait and hope we lose interest. Let's go find him. So this is very in progress still. Like, there's probably gonna be bugs as I go through these. Okay. What? What happened to your feet? You literally just went out of view. Oh, these? I tripped on the way over here and broke both my ankles. It's crazy how fast the Sausage Sports Club paramedics are. I have heard they're super fast. But you stole me a match. You gonna forfeit or what? No way, Bud here is gonna play on my behalf. Isn't that right? Sounds perfect. Let's go. So this is what I was talking about. Like, there's some kind of conflict, and then you as a third party, or fourth party, or maybe there's just one other character in the quest that you're dealing with. So you play a sports match. I'm gonna skip ahead just for the sake of time. Continue. Okay. I really thought that would work. At least I fooled you two. Well, no, we all know your casts are fake. You did run away, and then like 8 seconds later you had 2 casts on. Was a decent match though. I'm even feeling pretty pumped up. And he's embarrassed. So you do a quest. You get some coins, which you can use to buy hats. I don't know if I'll have enough, but I could fake it if I don't. Wow. There's your hat. Free DLC with cats. Yeah, it's kind of a big oversight that there are no cats in the game. That's kind of what you need to win over the internet. So something I'm experimenting with is certain objects, if you hit them with your face, you'll get coins. And you won't get coins forever, but the first few times you hit something, you get coins. And the animation of like giving you a coin is still not great. Like, that was way too slow and unclear. Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead to the end of the day just so you can see what that looks like. Whoa, everyone's really starting to hit their stride. It's still super even. Someone is bound to pull ahead in the next few days, but who's it gonna be? Let's see what happened today. First, Remy wormed his way out of a match with Young by faking 2 broken legs. Would you believe he actually had me fooled for a minute there? Then Bon Bon somehow convinced Flop to write a rap song. So these are recaps of quests we didn't do, but we like skipped ahead, so... Lucky for Flop, Bon Bon wasn't happy with it and kept pushing for changes. Poof, who could have guessed that would take a bad turn? And last, Peck tried to stay under the radar on her birthday and ended up with a big surprise. I think I even saw her crack a smile. Awesome, and let's see how you did. Cool, so this is one of the things I worked on this week that I'll come back to. But all of these stats are actually hooked up to like stats that are tracked in-game. And there's a bunch of stats that I could surface in like some menu that shows all of your stats or whatever, but that's not going to go in for launch, and it's not super important besides, you know, the main ones that are of interest to the story or players or whatever. So I'll do that. Yeah, and you have this, I haven't showed this, I guess, but this meter, as you fill this meter up, this is separate from unlocking hats. This is how you unlock characters, which everybody in the game shares. Like if I'm playing with 8 players, we individually unlock hats separately, so everybody has their own set of hats that they can use, so that everybody's individual and different. But when you go back to the player select, everybody shares that, so you unlock characters together. Nice, Elton. Tune in tomorrow. Okay, so now we're on day 2 of the season, and now we have a new area unlocked, the beach. We've got our beach version of the overworld theme. Some new toys to play with. So I wrapped the tetherball pole, that gave me some gold. I could do another quest. And the frame rate's so bad. Relatively new are these instruments that you can hit with your face. Gotta tone down this gold. Instruments don't need gold for people to play with them. So there's that. I'm hoping to add a lot more toys to this, so it's not just like a few per biome. But I'm really just trying to get everything else done, because that stuff is like low-hanging fruit. I could add 10 toys in a day. So while you're doing this adventure mode thing with your friends, you can also take a break and like play the competitive mode if you want to. Or just come hang out and play in the arenas if you want. Come kick around some hot dog crabs. Come hang out with this squid. So there's that. So I'm not gonna play through the rest of adventure mode, because you kind of get what it is from what I've shown, I guess. But I'll show. There's also the desert, which has trash spots here, and there's like more toys over here. There's a basketball and a hoop. This is maybe the hardest toy in the game to actually use. This volume's kind of loud. Yeah, slammed it. Eventually you will get a reward for that, some nice music will play, but not yet. And then here's the Sportsville biome. This one's interesting because there's interiors with more toys that you can't see from the outside. Some of that. There's this guy. You get in these good pits. Low gravity button over here. like I said before, these are all just movie sets, just like play sets for you to go play in. Okay, that's a pretty long demo. So that's what the game is. There's a finale sequence after you get to the end of the game, but I'm not going to show that. That will be spoilers. Spoiler town. Oh man, what a huge diversion. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next stuff. So the next thing I worked on this week, this sprint, is Switch controller management, which is like, how do I, as a group of players, if I want to play with, let me grab my Joy-Con here. If I want to play with two controllers, you know, if I want to control, if I as one player want to control a character with two Joy-Con, but then my friend comes over and is like, hey, let me play, but I only have two Joy-Con, I have to switch from that to one Joy-Con, like this. And in the game thus far, that's required you to open, if it's 4-player, then you have to hit a button that says adjust controllers, and then that pops up with like the switch menu for deciding what your, like, how your controllers are arranged. And if it's more than 4 players, there's not a switch menu that works with that many. Like the Nintendo doesn't support through this menu pop-up like arranging more than 4 players. So previously I had a button on my menu that said switch to 8 players, and then it would automatically switch to 8 players. But sometimes that would crash, and my handling of that was like not quite good, so it would like cause issues later sometimes. Or switching back from 8 to 4 would cause issues. So looking into this again, I realized, I don't know if this is new since I last worked on Switch input stuff, but there's now a way to automatically, like, if I hit the 2 bumpers on this controller, to just like make this like a controller, or if I hit the 2 bumpers on this to make that, you know, a set together. And there's an easy way to do that. I don't need to pop up a menu. It's really intuitive to do that, especially if you're like familiar with any other Switch game. Like that's the standard way to, you know, pair 2 or to single out one. So I made that switch, and I feel like it's way better. People understand it way better. You don't need to pull up some weird Switch menu. You don't need to have like this mogul menu of like, oh, we're in 4-player mode or we're in 8-player mode. And the thing I especially like is that not everybody needs to be using the same configuration. Previously, if you were going into 8-player mode, that would automatically switch every controller into single Joy-Con mode. But if I have 8 Joy-Con and I'm playing with 6 people, then, you know, one person could be using the two controllers, and the rest could be using, I guess that would be 7 people. But you get my point. Like, you can arrange it however you want. Nobody needs to use a single, unless, you know, you have a matching 8 people to 8 controllers. So that was cool. I figured that out. The final mastered soundtrack. Oh man, I got an email from my composer / sound designer Tom Duncan that here was the final, you know, the final tracks. And we've over the course of the game's development, every month or whatever, however long it takes, he would send me music and I would give him notes on it, and he would send me music again, and then I'd be like, yes, this is great, and then we'd put it in the game, and I would, you know, I would sit there for a while, and he wouldn't really iterate on those songs anymore. But coming up on the end, he wants to master all the sounds, make sure they're all balanced the same, just like make sure they're all the same quality bar and sound like they were exported from the same package, if that makes sense. And so I finally got the zip of every song that's going to be in the game, and it all sounds amazing. It all matches in volume, and it was super exciting to add that stuff to the game. And it was funny when I got this folder with all the music files. I was so excited that I wanted to listen to all of the songs at once, but I couldn't, like, I was too excited to like switch between them that I couldn't listen to more than like 5 seconds of any of them. So it was like, I don't know, it was very exciting. It's one of those moments that, like, when it happens, it feels like the game is like a real thing now. Like the first time you add in all your menus of like loading between stuff, that makes it feel like a real game. Or the first time you get a build working on a console, that feels like a real, like, I'm making a real game. It's just an exciting moment. So, Final Master soundtrack, be excited for that. When you're making your own game, I mean, you can be excited for me too. But okay, another interesting problem that I'd known I was gonna have for a while is when you play through adventure mode as your season, at the end of every day, you want some kind of feedback on how you're doing and how far into the game you are and stuff like that. So as you might have seen when I went through that, there was, you know, the 4 like stats or whatever that Dirk gave me at the end of that sequence. There was Island Explored, how many matches I've played, how much stuff I've unlocked, and my win rating. The most progress related one of that is Island Explored %. And that's like a really weird statistic to track on something like this, like in something like this game where it's just like an open world and you kind of wander around through it and there's no clear marker that I've explored some area. And it was a problem that I had thought about for a while and like wasn't sure how exactly I should fix it. And at some point a week or two ago, I realized that there was a really easy way that was really, that I still think is really elegant because it's like very exact, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. So if you've heard me talk in previous ones of these, it's been a while since I've talked about it, but the camera system in Sausage Sports Club is based on these zones, these red boxes that define a specific behavior of the camera if the focus point of the camera, which is in adventure mode, is like player 1. what the camera should do when player 1 is within this red box. So with this one, for example, I've defined a look direction, look angle, and an offset range, which is like if all my camera targets are really close together, then use the min offset range, and if everybody's really far apart, use the max offset. So if you're close, like try to zoom in, like get a good view of everybody, get a close-up maybe. Or if everybody's spread out, then we want to zoom out and lift the camera up so we have a good view of everybody. pretty easy, pretty simple. I also have splines. So if I'm, what's a good use case for this? So if I'm going around a corner, for example, here, the camera needs to turn so that, and you can see this in the preview over here. This green circle here is where the focus would be. So as I'm going around this corner, I want a smooth transition in and out of that direction. And that's really useful. But when I was trying to solve this problem, I didn't have a like a voxelized version of the world. I didn't have like a bunch of triggers placed all over the place that players could enter and like tick up like, oh, you've explored 1% more of the map or whatever. But what I realized is if I looked at these camera zones as like a representation of spaces players can be in, and if I think about, if I add up all of the volume of all of these like boxes, that gives me a pretty good approximation of like how much of the world you've explored. So like let's say, I don't know the exact number, but let's say if all of these zones together, if the volume contained by them adds up to like 10,000 meters or feet or whatever units you want to go by, if I enter this one, I know how big this box is. Like I have the dimensions of it because it's a box, and I can get the volume from that. And if I divide that volume by the total volume of all these boxes, which I can calculate at the start of the game or offline or whatever, then I know, and like if I start the game in this box and I walk to this box and I walk to this box and that's all I do in the day, I know from that, like I know what % of the world I've explored, and that's like really easy, really simple, really like I mentioned, it's I feel like it's elegant because it's an exact representation of the like space of the world. And I'm especially proud of the solution because I didn't have to add anything new. It was just like use data that I've already set up and like add it to the world to solve another problem. So that was a fun like eureka moment of like, oh, I have this, like I can just do it. My throat's kind of tired because I've been recording more dev commentaries. I mentioned this before on stream for sure, but if you didn't know, in Sausage Sports Club, once you unlock everything else, all of the characters, all the skins, you get commentary mode. Let's not do adventure. Okay. You get commentary mode, which if you've played the orange box from Valve, or I think Firewatch did one of these recently, although I haven't played the Firewatch one, so I don't know like what the format of theirs is. But in the orange box, you would walk around this game you've already played once, Portal or Half-Life or TF2, and there would be these like dialogue bubbles placed in the world, and you could walk up to them and just like play an audio diary from the creator of the game with their thoughts about that spot in the game. And that looks kind of weird. At certain angles, you can like really see the like soft particles or whatever. Yeah, so in the orange box, they had this cool system, and it was really inspiring to me in high school when I played Portal. To once I was done with Portal, I was like blown away. I thought this game's amazing. I need more of it. Why is this so short? How do I get more content to think about this game? It's such a clever idea. It's so interesting. And I discovered in the menu like, oh, there's a developer commentary. I can hear the developers talking about their thought process and their design and what was interesting to them about the game and stuff. And that was like crazy cool. And I even like this, I played Portal 10 years ago or whatever, maybe more than that, and I still remember it to this day as like a really interesting moment as a kid, like when I was in high school, of like, oh, I'm connecting with this developer. Like I understand what they were thinking about when they were making this game, and this was well before I knew I wanted to make games. So it was a really cool moment. So it's and I feel like I've totally talked about this before, but it's also like this, like I feel like it's a really good way to reward people who are interested enough in the game to play it to completion, where like if I play, I don't know how long it's going to take to get everything in Sausage, but if it's like 30 hours and you play the 30 hours and you're like, this game is great, I love my time with it, now what? Like, what's my reward for doing everything? I feel like this developer commentary is like a pretty good reward for that, because it's like an easygoing, like listening experience. You don't have to, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. I'm not gonna make like there's not gonna be a meter of like your progress of listening to the developer commentaries, because it's not important. But anyway, the idea is you would just like interact with it. I didn't hook up audio to it yet, but you just play it and it would go. And I'm considering adding like a, I don't know what you call it, like a play bar at the bottom of the screen. I might sneeze. Having a play bar down here with like the progress of this audio log and like what your time is out of the total length of it. Just because it like, I don't know, it's useful to know how long it's going to be before you can go to the next one. And yeah. Oh, and the point being, like, I recorded several of these today and yesterday, and I recorded a couple last week, and I'm actually finding it like pretty, it's not hard to come up with interesting things to talk about, but recording in a way that I have like a good tempo, and like it sounds focused, and like I know exactly what I want to say, requires me to like record many times. And like if I really wanted to make it like very, very high quality, I would record like, I might even do it as a script, like do a script and then record takes and then like cut the best takes together. But if I do, I'd like to do like 30 of these around the overworld and in the different arenas. And if I were to do that many plus do all the editing to and cutting to like make it like very high quality like that, I feel like I would either it would, you know, push back ship, or it would just take a long time to do it. So I might err on the side of like slightly lower quality and having more just for the sake of my sanity. And like if you're interested enough to listen to these, it's not gonna care. I feel like you're not gonna care that it's like not like super high production, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about it. Okay, what's next? Main menu rework. Okay, this is cool. This is actually like what I'm working on today. It must have been like 3 months that I put this off. From the moment I decided that I knew I was going to redo the main menu until now, basically. Unity, please. I'm worried that something bad happened in chat, because everybody got quiet at the same time. Let's go to the managers scene. Didn't change anything in the overworld. Okay, UI root. Cool. Okay. So I hit play, and then it'll like fix it, because it doesn't look like this. And this is still not done, so cool. Thanks, guys. Yeah, the alarm did stop. It was very recently finally stopped. Load save. Oh, loading to the overworld. That's kind of annoying. Can you tell that Switch is my target platform? Oh my god, Unity, why do you take 10 seconds to stop play mode? Fuck. So annoying. Hey, Mauricio. What up? Nice, cool. That's good. How's progress going? That GDC is really coming up on us. Okay, so this is the main menu. You might have noticed that the pattern is randomized every time you open it of the background. It's not important at all. It's just like a detail I like to add where I can. So you go into it, you transition to this. This is the main menu. I'm still, like I said, I'm still working on this, so it's gonna be, each one of these is gonna have a different preview image. It's probably not gonna say Tiny Tokyo there. It'll just be the description, the thing, and then once you click on, like if I click on free play, it'll pop up another of the same menu that's like the 4 arenas, and then each of those previews will have, you know, a picture of the arena like this one. Got through 3 of them. That's awesome. That's super good. That's super good. What the fuck? What is it? Oh, it's still got the main menu open. There we go. Cannot loop. That's pretty annoying. Should probably fix that. So I'm pretty excited about how this menu's coming together already. Just like the like whichever cursor you have, whichever button you have selected, like turning and growing, like feels pretty good to me. And just like the layout and the spacing of the menu feels pretty solid. Much more professional than what it was before, in my opinion. Yeah, this is what it was before. I mean, it looks fine, but it's not. It doesn't feel like a commercial quality game. Is my problem with it. And the you can tell from this logo, like the key art here is amazing, but the like bottom of it is not made to go on a single color background. It's made very specifically for the poster it was on, so I would have to really go in and touch it up a lot if I was going to keep it. So the new one is way better. Thanks, dude. Thanks, dudes. Now I just gotta actually finish them, which is probably gonna take me the rest of the day after I get off stream. Hopefully I can finish it today and like not have any major problems with it. I'm still a little bit concerned that showing a preview image of Adventure is totally not going to be clear versus free play versus quick play. Excuse me. Move on to the next stuff. Level entrance spawns. Okay, this one's kind of weird and a little bit specific. So for a long time in the overworld, I thought it would be really cool if whenever you go into an arena or the hat shop or whatever, if your character's position and rotation in the overworld was saved, so that when you return to the overworld, you would just like be in the exact same spot. I think that makes sense. But doing that has a bunch of weird problems where if from the overworld I go to player select and then pick and swap out only one character and then go back into the overworld, then suddenly like where are all of the characters going to spawn? Like if 7 out of 8 characters like have a set spawn point where they were before and we put them back there, and then the 8th one is like back at the hub, that's really confusing. If we try to figure out where that new player should be, then we either have to have like spawn points set up everywhere where it's valid for like a new player to spawn there, and not and like have them spawn on the ground and like look correct and be kind of with the group, or you could like spawn them in a spawn bubble, but that feels weird. So what I ended up doing instead of this, like I still have this last, I call it last override, last location override or something like that. Instead of doing that, what I do is I have entrance spawn tags, which for every entrance to like another level, they sound like a weird, they're on the player sensor layer. Okay, so it's annoying that this yellow has to show up, but basically what I do for every one of these entrances, I manually place like, okay, here is where it's valid to spawn if I come out of the gym for each of the players, and all the players get like forced to that position. Same with Hat Shop, same with all the entrances for the arenas. And that's just way safer. And I knew that this is what I should do for a long time, but it was just like a little bit too annoying of a task to take on until it was one of the last things I have to do. So that's done now. And then I'm trying to remember why I still have the last override. Last overworld. Still use it for something. If I still have last overworld position. If I do have the value, then use it. So why would I set this? Oh yeah, that makes sense. The reason that I would still need to save the last position I was in is if I'm in a quest, and during the quest I go to play a match. When I come back to the overworld, if my character has like moved to some spawn point, that's like pretty weird. So I need to just like spawn back to where I was. And I could change this because most of the quests are at specific defined locations, so I could just use like the player, you know, the player defined listen location for that quest. But there's also a few quests where you like intercept somebody while they're walking along a path, and that's like where the quest takes place, and so that you still need this kind of thing for that. So I'm just going to stick with this. And you also do it. Oh, this is like a special case quest. This quest is a nightmare. This is the only quest in the game where you escort an NPC to an arena, and then you load into the arena, some dialogue happens, and then you play a match in that arena, and then you load back out to the overworld, more dialogue happens, and you continue. Generally what happens is you have the dialogue in the overworld, and then you play a match in some arena, and then you load back to the overworld. But this thing of loading into an arena, spawning a bunch of NPCs in there to talk to, doing the dialogue, then playing a match, then going back out to the overworld is like a fucking it's a very complicated flow of events, especially for one quest. But because of luckily the way I've set up the systems in this game are like pretty strong, so it wasn't like I didn't break the game to make this work. It was just like error prone for a while. Okay, what's next? What else we got? Fixes plant shader to actually be cut out instead of blend. Okay, so I'm not gonna get too much into how shaders work. I don't want to give like a background of what a shader is and all that stuff. So I'll try to keep it like mid-level. Basically, in the overworld, player sensor. I talked about this before, but if you're very close to a bunch of plants, they're all overlapping, and if you're using alpha cutout, you don't need to redraw every pixel of a tree. When they're overlapping, you only need to do a depth check, and then if you know this pixel is in front of the pixel that's already been drawn, then draw on top of it, which is just like opaque geometry. Um, and if it's, and in cutout also, if this texture, like if the alpha in this point of the texture is below some threshold, then just like clip, which just means like don't draw this pixel, don't do Z right, don't do depth right, whatever. So that's good. So that's what alpha cutout is. Opposing side is blend, which is actual transparency, which is where overdraw happens, where for every pixel, I'm going to blend with every pixel that's every thing that's already been drawn behind me. That's that's been drawn to the screen, and if the thing that's behind me is transparent, then I'm going to draw and blend with that again. And if I have 10 transparent things in front of each other, this is going to draw again, 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 again. It's not like depth testing doesn't matter. It's only like I guess depth testing does matter. If it's behind the thing, then it's not going to draw it, but if it's in front of it, yeah. I guess the problem comes in where when you're doing a blend like this, when I draw my tree, I'm not writing to the Z depth. I'm just keeping whatever was there, which then allows a bunch of things to get drawn in front of each other, which creates overdraw, which can take it from drawing 1,000,000 pixels on a 1080 screen to drawing 5,000,000 pixels if there's if your whole screen's filled with 5 deep transparent pixels. So that's really dangerous. It turns out that for whatever reason, I had a misunderstanding at some point about how to define a shader as either cutout or blend, and I was using blend when I thought I was using cutout. So as a result, I was getting like overdraw problems when these trees can just use cutout because they don't need to be transparent because the leaves are either they're either 1 alpha or 0 alpha. And so I finally went through all my plant shaders and was like, oh, this is wrong. So, and sometimes this is true of, especially for me when writing shaders, like I'll write it one way because I don't understand like how it's supposed to be, or I don't fully understand the like thing I'm working with. Like the stencil buffer is a good example. The alpha thing is a good example. Or the geometry shader thing is a good example where like I don't quite understand like on the OpenGL side, like that stuff. Mauricio, I haven't actually like tested specifically how much I got back from blend to cutout, but I know it's not going to be worse than blend because it just doesn't make sense that it would be worse. That was just one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is like real dumb. Like, why did I do it like this? Something I forgot to write down on my list of stuff to talk about is I was, for some reason a couple weeks ago, I was rewriting some of the players' physics states and switching from coroutines to timers. For some reason, a pattern I adopted early on in this game was to start a coroutine as a timer, and then like if I, for example, if my dash was on cooldown, that would be like every frame I would check. When I was checking if I was allowed to dash, I would check, is this coroutine null, instead of checking like has enough time passed. And then in the coroutine, it would just be like wait, a yield wait for like a second or whatever the dash wait time is. And so there's a few problems there. One, I'm allocating memory for a coroutine every time I do a dash to run the cooldown. And that's true for a bunch of cooldown stuff related to players. Maybe like 10 very commonly used cooldowns were all in coroutines. And then the second part is, especially on Switch, null checks are really slow. So every frame, potentially multiple times per frame, each of these coroutine cooldown, like coroutine reference objects, was being checked whether it was null, which is like kind of slow. Yeah, yeah. I forget how I got into that coroutine topic. Oh, that's another example of like sometimes earlier in the project I wrote it one way because I didn't fully understand the connotations of what I was doing, or like I've just learned a lot since I did that, and so I have like more context now. Another embarrassing example of that happened like way early on in the project, and I just found this recently and was like, it was a totally like, oh my god, am I a bad game designer? Like, why would I do it this way? Is I noticed that in the code of like player locomotion or whatever, there's a section where when you run off of a ledge, that this section of the code handles this case. When you run off a ledge, I want to give players an extra like maybe let's say 0.3 seconds to hit the jump button before I stop accepting a jump, even though they're already off the ledge, like they're already in the air state instead of the grounded state. For some reason, stupid Chris from 2 years ago, or a year and a half, or whatever it was, wrote into this code that the time that you're allowed to jump, like the late jump time, is randomized between two numbers. And it wasn't even like a small number. It was like maybe like 0.1 seconds or something like that, which is so big and like an actual noticeable amount of time for somebody who's like playing the game at a high level. And I saw this and I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, how stupid am I that I thought this was like a good thing to have this? And I feel like I've noticed it like when playing implicitly, like, oh, my like late jump time feels weird. Like, why did that not feel the same as when I jumped off a ledge the last time? So that's another thing where like at some point in the past 3 years of making this game, I did a stupid thing because I didn't understand, or I was like a worse designer, or maybe I had just stayed up too late and like, I don't know. But oh, it's fixed now. It's not randomized time that you're allowed to jump off a ledge after you walk off anymore. So don't do that. Okay, moving on. There are so many bug fixes that have happened in this last week that if I were to go through all of them, it would probably take like 2 entire hours. So I'm definitely not going to do that. But I will scroll through and like if I see any that are particularly interesting. Oh, I did fix that one on stream, Mauricio. Okay, it's crazy. Yeah, I'll go through. I'll just read through these. I was looking at them before before the stream started, but there was just too much stuff to go through. Oh, I guess another comment I wanted to make on the main menu before I guess I've already moved on a little bit, but at some point in the last month or two, somebody suggested that I use a tweening thing for something, and I realized that I've never used a tweening library for anything. And if you're not familiar, a tweening library is an outside library that somebody else wrote that you can include in your project that has a bunch of like utilities specifically for like moving or scaling or rotating, or I don't know what else you would use it for besides those things, or like changing the color of something or changing the alpha of something, and doing all of these things so that you can like loop them through like several colors, or or like ping pong them back and forth. It's basically just like a library that's useful for animating a bunch of common values or arbitrary values for use in, you know, your game engine or your framework or just C++ or whatever it is. And for some reason I never used one, and there wasn't a particular reason. I just like had never got into the habit of doing it. Never thought it was that hard to like write code to tween something or whatever. But finally I saw this tweet, or somebody said it to me in person, I don't remember which, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. Like that, it just makes sense that I should make that part of my routine, because so much of my time writing UI and like writing new systems has historically been just like, oh, I want to move this menu like this and then change the color or whatever. Hey, 3D U shadow, welcome, and thanks for the follow. So finally I did it, and I realized I'm a big stupid idiot, and that tweening libraries are awesome. And this routine I'm looking at here is, what is it, 50 lines of all of the tweens that happen when I change. Let me go back to it. When I change the selection of something in the menu, in the main menu that I showed before, which is changing the color of a button, changing the rotation of a button, changing the rotation of the text inside the button, offsetting the position of the button relative to the, or of the other buttons relative to the selected button. Once I have it up, it'll make more sense what I'm talking about. And previously doing this, I would have had a bunch of separate little coroutines, one for each like tween that I'm doing, maybe, or maybe one routine that runs on each button. Where the hell? There it is. Okay. Oh, and also the tweening of the scale of the like preview thing. Yeah, so this just feels like way, or it feels way faster that I used a tweening library than what it would have been if I had actually like hand coded it. Just to compare, what's a good example somewhere I can show? Hey, the baker, welcome. Let's do. Trying to think like what a good example would be of this. That hot frame rate. These aren't really good examples. This one? Is that a good example? Nah. What if I worked on menus a lot in this game? Oh, I know the one. So this menu is just like a big pile of coroutines. It's all like handmade. So there's a ton of stuff happening. On the sides there's like these like colored panels that are kind of like a transparent gradient from like here over the edge, and those tween up their alpha, tween their color. It's very brief. Well, I skipped it now. And the mirror's slowly filling up, slowly, like quickly changing color really fast. Every time you hit, it like pulses the size of the like unlock meter, constantly is pulsing the A button size. I'd like to get back to that menu. I'm gonna have to skip through this, I guess. Okay. So the A button's tweening, the actual present itself is tweening. Every time you hit it, there's like a rotation tween to like shake it a little bit. You can see in the actual tween itself, it's like running between a bunch of colors, and also the white bar like fills up, and then slowly the color bar like fills to match it. And the scale is changing. And the box is like scaling down, but that's not really what I'm talking about. So this is like the very long version of like, tweening library is cool. You can do a lot of stuff with very little code. An example of this is all of the code I had to write to rotate my option button back to 0 from when it was rotated, and that's like pretty good. And it happens over time. I get an object from it that I can yield on. That's a thing that you want to do. rtween yield return rtween wait for completion. So you wait, and that's easy. Let me jump to the unlock. Word. So show smash widgets routine. So this is a coroutine literally just for like tweening in like a bunch of menu pieces. So I'm manually running a timer, manually lerping between a bunch of things, scale, position, anchored position of a thing, anchored position of another thing. I have to like save these off into separate variables, and it's just this thing is just like very hard to read. But I could do all of this same work in literally 4 lines, I think. The one thing I'm not familiar enough to like compare against, I guess, is like manually setting like where a thing is going to start, and then like setting where it's going to go is easy, but unless I can also set where it's coming from, then it's going to go from wherever it is currently, and that may not be what I want. So still figuring that stuff out. But I'm really excited about the tweening library thing. I feel like it's going to make me faster at making stuff. Now I'm just going to look through bugs, and like if there's any interesting stuff, then I'll talk about that. And if anyone has questions, now is a good time for that. Otherwise, I'm going to get off. It's getting close to food time over here. Do. The player's last selected hat is now saved between play sessions. Lol. Oh, there's another Switch bug I wanted to talk about, and this one was all my fault. So when you play Sausage Sports Club with a single Joy-Con like this, flopping your head is done by tilting the Joy-Con like this. And in my input handling of the Switch, I wrote a custom, like on top of in control, I wrote a custom handler for Switch where, you know, I have to like manually grab state from the Switch controller and then feed it into the like object types that in control uses to manage and tick and track input stuff. In doing so, the single switch like lone Joy-Con where you rotate is the least tested, least tested version of the game that I use, because this, it's hard to do. Like, I have to make a Switch build and I have to have a bunch of controllers, and up until now I had that annoying menu system that was just like hard to get to playing with this thing. So it was just like pretty annoying to test it. But since I fixed it and I was able to easily test it, and from doing all these playtests this weekend, I noticed that when there was one or more single Joy-Con attached, both which device is currently active, or sorry, I should say, if there's more than one, if there's two or more of these connected, which Joy-Con is in control of a menu is inconsistent. It's always one of these, and often you have to like hit the button multiple times to get it to actually work. And this is true in menus, and it's true in like dialogue when you're in the game and you're like pressing through dialogue. This was like a very noticeable, annoying bug. What I finally realized is the in control has this setting that you can set on what's called an input control, which is like I would call a jump an input control, and I think that's what it is. It might be like the A button is like an input control, but basically you can set certain input types to be what's called passive, which means which is used at least for detecting which controller was active most recently. a common line I might type if I was writing like input code, whatever, so I would say input manager last active device like action 1. This is like, did the player hit the confirm button? That's like what this would be. And if you're making a multiplayer game, you might recognize like that's a little bit weird, because if two players hit their confirm button on the same frame, like which one of them will get that. So if I have if I'm in like the player select menu and all the players are interacting separately, they have their own cursors, there's not one shared menu, this is not what you would want to use, because if two players hit the button on the same frame, one of them is going to drop input, and that's not what you want. But in a menu, this makes sense because everybody's kind of sharing the same input. You only want to detect like potentially the most recent active player, and then you still kind of like want, really on a menu, you would still want to run like do a for loop over all the players and like really pull each one, and if somebody's hit confirm and that's like taking you to your next menu or whatever, you would break, and that's all. But it's a lot easier to use this, and it's been rare in the case of this game where the menus are not like timed or anything, where players like can't figure out how to do it because they're hitting the button on the same frame. That's not like a real problem in a menu, at least. But on the Switch, with this problem that I was discovering, what I realized was the gyroscope input wiggling like this, I wasn't properly setting it to be passive, which was really important because a gyroscope as your input every frame is never going to be 0. It's always going to be like something. Even if you're holding it as still as you possibly can, it's still going to be like very small numbers that are changing like rapidly. So what was happening in this case was every frame, every single Joy-Con was like fighting to be the active one. So what happened is the most recently added Joy-Con, the most recently added like item in the input in control's like active device list, that was a single Joy-Con, was taking over as the most recent input always, unless you accidentally turned off your controller or I don't know, backed out or merged into a dual Joy-Con, then that would be forgotten and not be at the end of the list anymore. And this is because In Control internally is doing a for loop over all the input devices, and then whichever one is last, that happens to be this guy, the single Joy-Con, would get to its, it would pull through all of its input controls. It would get to the gyroscope one. It would see that it's not passive. It would see that its value has changed this frame, and then it would set that to be the active device. And so it was like this weird thing where like the order of the items in input in Control's like active device list mattered for which device was getting input, which is like not a surface exposed thing to players at all, especially in my game where the order, your player number, your player ID is like assigned by you, whoever joins in the game first, not as an input device, but as like who hits the button A to join as a character first. So it was just like, that was a crazy bug. And I'm really glad that I was able to discover it before, before submitting to Nintendo again, or before the game came out, or that was a tough one. Oh, I forgot to mention that the most recent Unity update broke the post-processing stack's bloom somehow, and maybe only on Switch. I think only on Switch. Not really sure why that is. Still haven't figured that one out, but about the bloom thing. Mauricio. Do you mean specifically the post-processing thing, or like the input thing? Oh, sure. Yeah. I don't know if you use In Control, but the only thing I had to do was make sure that when I was setting, I ended up doing an update. I changed the passive property of that input device, or of that input control In Control, of the like right stick. Okay. I just set that to passive every frame right before I set the value, to like triple ensure that it gets set to passive. The problem that was happening, I realized a while ago this passive thing mattered, but I was setting, I can't show that code on stream unfortunately, but in Control basically I like, for all of the input controls, which is like move X, move Y, move X right, move X left, move Y up, move Y down, and then there's In Control has this like 2-axis version of an input control where you can just say move X, and that'll give you a float that can be between -1 and 1 instead of just a 0 to 1 value, which is what most of the input controls return. But that one is initialized differently from, like the 2-axis thing is initialized differently from the single one, and it's later in the initialization setup. So if you do, if you set that one passive in the constructor of that input device, then it's not going to be saved. You need to do it later. And I couldn't figure out where the later step was, so I just put an input right before I feed the gyroscope's input into the in control, whatever, I don't remember what the function call is. But yeah, I like, if you run into that kind of thing, definitely let me know and we can talk about it off stream though, because NDA. Yep. Okay. Let's see what else we got. at some point I made dialogue worse. Oh yeah, I did mention post process broke. Um, I'll talk about the dialogue thing first. At some point, I made the dialogue camera better, but then in that same, I don't know if it was the same commit or like that same week, I made the dialogue camera have a pop when you start going into a dialogue camera. Like in the when the dialogue system takes over the camera and like moves it in closely, there's like a pop on the first frame where it like moves a little bit and then like continues the rest of the tween. I haven't figured out what the cause is yet, but the cameras, the dialogue cameras look slightly better, but the first frame is fucked up still. So that's kind of a regression, but there's also an improvement there. Post process, yeah. So the post process image effect thing broke, and if you're not familiar with that, that's Unity's built-in, not built-in. The team at Unity made this component that you can add to your camera, which is called the post-processing behavior, and this is basically the idea is everybody wants image effects in their game, but if you have image effects from different sources, they generally will work with each other, but the way that they'll work is they'll just do one at a time, like blit, like take what the camera has seen and we'll like take that, run a shader on it, like blit back to the screen. And that's like not terrible necessarily, but if you do, you know, 8 of those in a row because you want a bunch of different image effects, that becomes bad really fast. So what Unity has done is they've taken a bunch of common image effects that people generally want in their game, and they've made this stack. The way the stack works is you check all the things you want, so you can check, you know, bloom, depth of field, whatever, and then, as I understand it, and totally correct me if I'm wrong, Unity has in the background they have, I don't know if it compiles it now or if it's compiled offline and you just already have these assets, but based on what you've checked off, it either, you know, takes the asset from their folder that combines all of those effects into one shader, or maybe it's like an if def in the shader that's like, if bloom is defined, then do like this chunk of shader code. But the idea is that all of the shaders, all of the effects happen in one shader so that you can do it all in one blit, which is just cheaper. Like you don't have to do as many blits. That's good. And that's cool. And the especially cool thing is, me as somebody who's like not an image effects guy, I don't know anything about making you know, about, how do I explain? I don't really know how image effects work basically, and I don't need to know because I have this view. I can just like mess with these settings, make it look good. I don't need to know how it works. I can just do it. And I don't need to know, because I have this stack, I don't need to know, like, I don't even need to know the words. Like, I don't need to have heard of color grading. I don't need to have heard of a user LUT. I don't need to have heard of chromatic aberration, grain, vignette, dithering, whatever. I can just try these, and like now I know of them because I have these checkboxes. Whereas if this didn't exist, I would just have to be like, oh, my game looks kind of bad, like I don't know why, and then I'll have to hear of each of these separately and keep like learning new things one at a time by happenstance or advice from friends or whatever. So I really like this post-processing stack, even though I'm not using it that much, especially on Switch. And bloom was kind of like the effect that I like the most. I think the game would look bad without color grading. Like it would look significantly worse, but I like bloom on there too. But unfortunately, getting back to my point, this update broke bloom only on Switch, such that objects with bloom would, for whatever reason, get like a black square that renders over any set of pixels that had bloom on it. And that was true whether or not I was using HDR, so it wasn't that the value at that pixel was greater than 1 that caused this black thing. I haven't figured out what the deal with that is, the next step for me is to try downloading Unity's post-process stack version 2, which is on GitHub already. It's kind of in like a beta state right now, I think. So it could make things worse. It could be like not as performant, or it could be better. Hard to say. But I didn't at the time I was doing this update, I was preparing for Juegos, and I was like about to submit another cert build to Nintendo, so I didn't, and I was already doing this like upgrade to a new version of Unity, so I didn't want to like further screw myself by upgrading to this new post-processing stack that potentially had a bunch of issues that I wasn't aware of, or God forbid that I make my performance bad again by using like an unoptimized an unoptimized asset. That would be terrible. Ooh. Okay. Let's see what else I got. Oh man, here's a fun bug that's going to be very annoying to explain. So in a little background needed about adventure mode, I talked about quests earlier and how as you're playing through the season, each day you do several quests. Once you do a couple quests, then the day ends. Great. What I didn't mention is that the quests in the overworld, there's two things about them. One, there's more quests that are available to be played than you can play in one season. Over the course of a season, you can play maybe like 15 or something, 12 or 15, and total there are like 25 quests. So there's a lot more than you can play in one playthrough of the game. And the other thing that's important to mention is that the adventure mode is kind of planned out procedurally, meaning that these quests are random order. They don't like rely on each other at all. You can play through the game, never see half of the quests. You'll be none the wiser. You won't have lost out on anything. You'll still probably have met all the characters at least once. Although there's potential for you to not meet them. But within that system of kind of like procedural placement and arrangement of quests over the course of a season, there's a lot of bugs, obviously, like a lot of room for error. Recently I discovered, or I should give a little bit more background. For the last like 3 or 4 months, there's been this bug that crops up kind of rarely, but consistently. Like not consistently in there I can repro it consistently every time, but it never went away. Nothing I could figure out to fix it would ever fix it. And this bug is that during adventure mode, sometimes for some reason you would pop into the overworld and there would be 2 characters occupying the same space. so they're two sausage animals' butts were like inside of each other, and then they were like kinematic, locked to the ground, so they wouldn't resolve, they wouldn't go out of each other, they were just stuck. And then their heads were physics, like dynamic physics, not set to be kinematic, and so they would just be like jittering, trying to get away from each other, just like totally busted. And sometimes there would be even more than 2 characters overlapping, and it would be like a hydra of these weird sausage animals. Very funny bug, but also very bad, and I couldn't like repro it consistently, so I didn't know what the problem was. Only recently did I learn that when you start in adventure mode, go into a quest, so play a sports match, come back out, after the quest is done, then there's more quests to do. What I didn't realize is that when that happens, every marker around the world, which is like quest locations, which is like places I've defined that quests are allowed to be, and then within a quest location there's sub-locations of where NPC A is allowed to be, where NPC B is allowed to be, where the player is supposed to stand to listen to those 2 NPCs. There's some state on those of the quest location, or of the sub-quest locations, which is where players are and where NPCs are. There's some state there saying if something is occupying the spot. What I didn't realize is that when I leave the overworld and come back from a quest, I'm reloading the scene, and the scene owns these quest locations. So when I come back, they're all, they're all reset to their default state, which is that nothing is occupying anything. So I come back, reload all my state, or I don't reload all my state, and then sometimes characters are like placing a quest, like mid quest. For example, there's a quest where one character supposedly steals like your poetry book, and you have to like go around the beach and dig up these like sand pits or whatever. And then at the end of this quest, after you've dug up all the sand, that character will like spawn into a quest location. But if I've done another quest before that, that means that I've loaded out of the overworld to an arena to play a sports match, loaded back into the overworld. All the quest locations in the overworld are now clear, like no quest location is marked as being occupied by a character. So then when this character that supposedly stole your notebook or whatever spawns in after you've looked at, like, dug up all the dirt, whatever, they spawn in. They could spawn anywhere because everything is open, which means they could spawn inside of another player and create one of those stupid Hydra things. So I finally figured out that this is what's happening, and I fixed it by maintaining the state of the quest locations in the NPCs. Basically, the NPCs like hold which quest location and sublocation they were at last, and then refresh it when you go back to the overworld. But this was like a very silly bug, and kind of a devious is the right word? Insidious, kind of an insidious source of a bug. This like scene unloading and then reloading is like very weird. Haven't had a bug like that before. Talked about that. Wrap. I finally fixed the few instances of quests having like not finished dialogue where there were two quests where you would get to the end of it, and you'd finish the sports match, come back out, and the final dialogue there is like the resolution of the quest, and it would just pop up and say, Chris, finish this, and then that was the end of the quest. So I finally finished those. Some of this stuff maybe isn't that interesting. This will be the last one I talk about, and then I'll get off, I think. So sometimes there's a complex enough building that you don't want to like, or in my game, often there's buildings where it's like complex enough where I don't want to go through and place like simple collision meshes, and I just use a mesh collider. But the stairs specifically are like a very bad shape for a character to walk on. It just feels like very clearly like it's shaped like a staircase, and you're like jittering on it and get stuck on weird spots. So I had to go through everywhere in the game where there's stairs and replace them with, this ramp kind of shape. That's true there, that's true over here. In the music venue, you can get a good view of it. That one, that's true in the junkyard arena. That's true in the bug museum arena. It's true all over the place. That's just like general tip. Stairs are bad, so you'll have to replace them with a good ramp glider. I think that's all I got, yeah. It was a pretty good 2 weeks, I think. think in 2 more weeks the game will be pretty close to actually like shippable done, or actually not, because GDC is this week, or this coming week is Train Jam, and then GDC is the next week. So maybe not so much progress the next 2 weeks, unfortunately. Getting really close. Welcome, Pempu Making. Take RNG. I like that. I like those emojis. What are those from? Yeah, they'll be good for the game, but not in the usual way, I guess. In the making it way. Okay. That's all the stuff I want to talk about. I started a couple weeks ago. I started talking about what's left to do on the game. I think that would be good to do now, because it's getting so close to done. Let's do this one. Hopefully there's not anything weird in my Trello. So the last stuff, we've got the main menu rework. That's a big one. One big fix I want to make is, it's not really a fix, but it's like a quality of life feature, I guess, is that when I load into a level or the hat shop or the gym or whatever from the overworld, loading back to the overworld takes a really long time, because the overworld is a big scene. There's just a lot of stuff in it, and it's kind of made such that I can't really like load the scene that you're in and then actively load the other scenes after it over the next few frames. Like, maybe you could do that like if you spawn in the aquarium, and you could do that for Hollywood, or you could do that in Hollywood for the desert or something, but it seems like risky to me, and that it's likely that you would see pops and feel like frame rate hitches when that happens, and so I'm not really willing to make that change. But what I realize is that there's no real reason that I can't just turn off the root of the overworld when I enter one of these levels and just keep it around, because it's all the dynamic stuff that gets spawned in at runtime into the overworld is it's just the players basically. Everything else is handled by the object pooling system, and is meant to get cleared when you leave that state of being in the overworld anyway. So it's basically like, why not just leave the overworld off? I guess I haven't tested, like, if I turn the overworld on, is that gonna like cause chug for a couple seconds between scenes? But that's reasonable, and my level loading system really isn't, not system is a strong word, but like the flow of me loading a level isn't really set up for keeping a scene in the, like keeping a scene loaded while you go to other scenes. I pretty much always load single, which is like a good way to keep the game from being more error prone, to just load a single scene at a time. But this case I think is worth it for the, just to avoid the, on Switch at least, the like 12-second load time or whatever it is. It's a very annoying load. So I need to do that. The other really cool thing that gives me, if I just hide the overworld game state, is that all of the state of the world is saved automatically during my play session. Like if I go into player select and swap out my characters and then load back in, I don't lose what I was doing. I don't lose where I've moved all the objects in the world. It stays because the overworld has just been turned off, and that's really good. That's something that makes a game world feel real, is when you've been playing in it for 3 hours or whatever, that the results of all your actions remain on the playing field or whatever. So I'm excited for that. Hopefully I'll be able to make that work. It's kind of a risky change this late in development. I still want to add more toys. I have some ideas, but I tend to find that the best toys are the ones I kind of think of on the spot, not the ones I've had planned for a long time. There's some settings menu stuff I need to do specifically for PC. I don't have like image effects stuff and like performance related stuff. So if your computer is a beast, like kind of still going to look the same as the Switch version until I add more of those. There's still a lot of bugs in adventure mode, just like little weird flow things, or like players getting stuck, or like awkward timing of not locking the human player in place when they're supposed to be locked in place. That stuff's kind of weird. There's a few crashes on Switch still that I need to fix. But that's, oh, I need to record more developer commentaries and maybe like do some editing on those, but maybe not too much. And then I'm looking over here at my cork board with like all my schedule on it. But that's pretty much it. It's really just fixes and finishing the main menu, finishing developer commentaries, which is kind of as much as I want to do it. Like I could, with what I have now, I could ship developer commentary and it would not be that great, but I have like 8 recorded, I think. That's a decent start. So it's just bug fixing now once I do the main menu. And toys. Toys is like another one of those as much as I can do in the time I have left kind of things. So pretty cool. And polish, but you know, who needs that? Okay, with that all said, it's been like 2.5 hours, so that's plenty of weekly update for me. I'm ready to go off. Thanks for coming by if you came by. If you're a new follower, thanks for following. If you're not, consider following maybe. Because I do these every week and I try to make it useful and like worth coming back for. Otherwise, I'll see you next weekend, which is Train Jam, so it'll probably be from a hotel or my hostel room or something, maybe a Starbucks. But I'll definitely try to make it out next week because I'll have updates. The game will be more. It will actually be feature complete. I think this time next week, like I said, the main menu will be done, and hopefully developer commentary will be done, and toy prototypes. Maybe it's not feature complete officially, but it's pretty damn close, I would say. Okay. Yeah, thanks for coming by. See you next week.